Good evening. We'll start with apologies. And do you have any apologies this evening? Thank you very much indeed. And minutes of the previous meeting, pages 7 to 12. Anyone have any comments? Does everyone accept the minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, item 15, any declarations of interest? To Norman?
Yes, I need to declare a personal interest in agenda item 18, shareholders report. Firstly, I was a non-executive director of WPC Holdings Limited for part of the period reported, and secondly, my wife is now a paid non-executive director of WPC Holdings Limited.
And I need to extend echo that I was a non-executive director of the Optimist Group, which I no longer am, but it covered part of the report period.
I declare a personal interest in agenda item 18 as well, so I'm a paid non-executive director of WPC Holdings.
Thank you.
And I'm the same.
And I think that's it for tonight. Public question time. I don't believe we've got any public questions this evening. So moving on to member questions, which are item 17 on the agenda. And the first one we've got this evening is from Charles Moggetts, who's asked the executive member of Planning and Enforcement, Simon Weeks, if you'd like to. Sorry? Okay.
Could an object perhaps take question out of order, move straight to and come back to that?
We'll move to number 2 then. He's actually in front of you, exactly. So we'll move to Gary's question and come back to that.
I'll just ask the question standing in my name and I shall sit down while I'm waiting for the answer. Shall I give you the answer while you're sitting, guys? Okay. Right. As I'm sure you're aware, we are required to use the most up-to-date housing assessment figures, and this has been confirmed by government in various guidance. And that's the most recent, and also the most recent planning appeals. GL Hearn carried out a revised housing needs assessment in October 2015, and we're now compelled to use that as the most up-to-date information we have. As this is an objectively assessed piece of evidence, the public consultation was not required, and it is not something that we could have achieved anything by carrying out any public consultation on it. We are forced, as I'm sure you know, to accept these figures. We will challenge them, but we are being constantly challenged at appeal, and they keep pushing those figures up, and those appeal inspectors are backing those people in so doing it. But we're not sitting back doing nothing, we are challenging those.
Do you want a supplementary?
Thank you for that, David. One of the concerns I do have is, although I see leadership changes within the administration, two of the key architects of the above disastrous housing policies, which I've listed in my original question, and supported by the Conservative group, one has to worry about the future for Auckland's green fields. I mean, if you look at Windsor and Maidenhead, it has 53 out of 57 Conservative councillors, yet they're in the same drive like us in support of the Home Report housing numbers has actually fractured that council and its residents. My supplementary question is, how can our residents have any confidence at all in a Conservative administration which is positively supporting massive housing building on an epic and on a national scale that will lead to concrete, vast tracts of open fields? If I actually go back to, you had two other points, I apologise, in your original question. So let me come back to that. But the first one was the secret plan to build up to 15,000 houses at Graiseley. Graiseley was thought to have potential to be considered as a joint venture with neighbouring authorities to accommodate some of the housing requirement that government is forcing us to accept. And that's governments of all colours, Labour government, coalition government of Conservative and Liberal, and the Conservative government. They're all forcing us to accept housing. This site is not totally in the borough, and it is not designed that we're taking anybody else's housing, which I think the third part of your question comes on to. It was, as many other projects, considered in a confidential environment to understand if it could be a benefit in alleviating some of our housing pressures, exactly what you're saying about building on greenfield sites. I totally agree with you on that. It is certainly not my objective. It is now formally as a submitted site and being assessed alongside the other some 200 sites. And finally, you talked then about there was something announced, and I'm totally ignorant of this, in Wokingham Town Hall to support Bracknell, Reading and West Berkshire should they have any housing shortfalls. This authority has over many years complied with government requirements to assess our housing need and accommodate such need within our boundaries. While we have a responsibility under law to work together with our neighbours as part of the duty to cooperate, it is not our intention to take any of the future unnecessary housing in our borough, especially as we are at the within our housing area, which is the west of Berkshire. We have the highest number of houses that is being pushed on us at 856, which is 221 more than Bracknell, which is just down the road. I will not sit by and see this area concreted over. And I know that Gary, you will make sure that none of us do that. But you have my assurance, because we will be writing to government, we are arranging meetings with them. This authority has granted some 10,000 planning applications, and the appeals that we feel on the inspectors are because they challenge the affordability. And affordability, as everybody knows, is all to do with delivery. If you've got more houses being delivered, the houses are cheaper. Well, 10,000 planning applications out there, you have to ask yourself, and I would hope the press pick this up, who is it who's holding back on the delivery? It's not Wokingham Borough Council, it is the developers. And if they actually built what they say they would build, you would have cheaper houses in this area. But we are constantly losing that appeal, and the government have to change their attitude, and we are going to make sure that they're aware of our frustrations. Have you any further points on that?
No, it's just supplementary. He's
What?
asked us supplementary.
You've got yourself.
He feels very passionately about this subject, which is why he's got this job. Okay, and on to question 17.3, Pauline Jorgensen. There's a question first, Councillor Weeks.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the Executive Member for Planning Enforcement what he is doing to hold the developers to account with appalling landscaping and completion of a city hall development in Irvine.
Thank you for your question. It's true the Council has struggled to get the developer Persimmon to honour its Section 106 legal obligations in a timely fashion at the Sibley Hall development. And anecdotally, we understand we're not alone in having this problem. WBC officers and early town council have met on site with representatives of Persimmon on at least 3 occasions in the last couple of years. And I've been in regular contact with senior management at Persimmon with a view to persuading them towards a satisfactory conclusion. On each occasion, Persimmon have agreed, but then failed to fully implement a programme of outstanding agreed works. The current estimated date for completion of all works is at the end of June 2017, and should Persimmon again miss this deadline, the Council will have no option but to pursue a legal remedy.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes. Thank you very much, Simon. That's good news on behalf of the residents, particularly. This has now been going on for 2 years, I think. It's completely unsatisfactory, both for the residents who moved into really nice new houses and found that the landscaping and the work has not been completed, and also for the residents in the area that lived there before, who have found the roads are still not repaired and that the whole thing is looking an eyesore. I went round this morning and took some more pictures, which I'd be happy to show you, which show that the promised reseeding and weed killing doesn't seem to be very effective. I got John Redwood involved in November last year to help. He wrote to Persimmon, and at that point they were promising that everything would be resolved shortly. I've got the letter and I'll be happy to give you a copy. I would be very keen to see this fixed, and I'm very pleased to hear your reassurances. I actually talked to the Town Council this morning. They've still got a list of things that require doing. They don't sound to me like the sort of things that will be done by tomorrow, but we can remain hopeful.
Okay, well, thank you for that. It's disappointing that one or two national developers appear to have such disregard for agreed planning conditions, often to the detriment, as you say, not just of the existing residents in the area, but also to the purchasers of the new houses. So as indicated in my initial answer, we will be pursuing an appropriate legal remedy.
Thank you. The next question is from Councillor Ferris, and it's for Norman Robinson.
Good evening. In response to the terrible fire in North Kensington, has anyone in Woking Borough Council clarified the status of all fire-related issues in Woking Borough Council-owned buildings, including working fire/smoke alarms and sprinkler systems installed or retrofitted wherever recommended, and whether the same cladding has been used on any building in the borough as in Grenfell Tower?
Thank you very much for your question, Lindsay. First, I would like to give my condolences to the families of those killed and best wishes to those affected by the fire. Clearly, it was quite a tragedy. To answer your specific question, yes, we have been reviewing the fire safety status of our buildings. For the corporate portfolio, which includes education, I can confirm the following. Buildings where we have a duty to provide a fire risk assessment in accordance with the regulatory order are fully compliant. All the maintained schools have been resurveyed this year and are being assessed for any works that are required. All corporate buildings were fire risk assessed last year, and of the 3 sites identified as moderate risk, we have completed the necessary works to lower them to tolerable levels, i.e. low risk. As part of the Council's policy, all new educational properties that have been completed since 2012 have installed sprinklers. These include Wangels, Bulmers, St Crispin's, Charvel Primary, Wakefield Primary, Windmill Primary and the new Arborfield School. Our buildings are not high-rise and there are none over 5 stories. Moving on to cladding, 2 new buildings have been constructed recently with cladding, Shinfield Infants Hall and the new Bulmers admin block. Both sites have used Marley Equitone Natura cement fibreboard rain screen cladding and they're only single story in height. This product has a Class 0 flame spread certification and isn't insulating. Windmill and Wakefield primary schools, which are both academies, are clad with Dura cladding plastic composite decorative planks with a fire rating to Euroclass DFL S1. Both are single story and have multiple escape routes and sprinkler protection. This cladding meets building regulation, it's been assessed, and officers are not recommending any further action or testing of the cladding. Looking at properties under construction by our housing companies next, there are 2 schemes under construction for modern homes, Foster's Extra Care Scheme and 52 Reading Road. These both include a sprinkler system within the designs and as part of the build specification due to the more vulnerable nature of the future tenants of both schemes. The apartment blocks at Phoenix Avenue under construction for Berrybrook homes are of traditional brick construction with no sprinkler system. They will meet all fire safety requirements and will have to satisfy fire safety officer checks and assessments prior to them being let. In relation to town centre regeneration, no properties will be higher than 5 stories. All our properties have been designed and will be built in compliance with building regulations and the relevant fire regulations. Up-to-date fire risk assessments are in place where they're required. The shocking tragedy of Grenfell Tower fire provides an important reminder to us all that we cannot be complacent with regards to the security and safety of our buildings and accommodation. Although our records show we are diligent in fire risk assessments and that we are a relatively low risk in terms of the nature of our buildings, we must continue our efforts to keep our residents safe. This is a summary of a response. There is a more detailed response available if you wish. I'll give
I would find
you a
that
more
useful.
detailed written response. So thank you very much.
But it might be in the full detailed response, but could you just clarify that when you said the fire risk assessment in the early part of your answer, was that recent or was that last year? I just want to have it when you, I won't put on it now, but I just wanted to check that, because my concern there is that fire assessments were done in lots of places around the country, and it's been found not to be quite right. So if you're saying there was something done in 2014, 15 or 16, then that I'm looking at anything that we've done in the last few weeks. But that's quite a good answer, thank you. I have a supplementary. In addition to the cladding, serious concerns have been raised about the thermal insulation used. The most common thermal insulation used is polyisocyanuric, known as PIR. This unfortunately has now been found to have problems both as a fire hazard and as a source of toxic products, in particular hydrogen cyanide. Has Woking Borough Council ascertained whether there are any buildings in Woking Borough which should use PIR?
I will check more thoroughly on that, just to give you 100% assurance on that. My understanding is that the checks that we've undertaken so far is that we haven't identified buildings, but I'll get back to you with a full response to that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Lindsay. And please could you put in writing the clarification that you were asking Norman about as well?
I can give it to Anne.
Thank you very much indeed. And the next question is from Councillor Bray, and that's again a question from Norman. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Particularly good evening, Norman. Last year, the introduction of the new grass cutting contract led to a large number of complaints, and a lot of time and effort was expended by councillors, residents and officers sorting them out. Could the executive member please explain why the same problems are recurring with respect to some of the same areas of grass this year?
Okay, thank you very much, Prue. It's certainly true that we had problems during the early months of the ground maintenance contract in 2016, and these were explained at the time last year. However, last year those problems were generally dealt with by mid-July. It is difficult to predict weather patterns and hence how things will grow. That's why we introduced an outcomes-based contract, so that our contractor can be more flexible in responding to different weather patterns. 2017 cutting season started well in early March, with the first cut being completed within 4 weeks. The second and third cuts started well, but were disrupted by rain, which saw the time for the second and third cuts fall behind by approximately 2 weeks. ISS, our contractor, has mobilised an additional crew, and they have almost got up and expect the third cut to be completed by the end of June. They will then immediately start the fourth cut at the start of July and continue grass cutting during the growing period up to October. On top of the resources dedicated to grass cutting, we've also worked in partnership with ISS to deal with overgrown vegetation and sightlines, thereby avoiding many of the complaints we had last year. On the positive front, we've had a number of compliments from those who complained last year commenting on the improvements. We've also had a significant amount of compliments on the wildflower areas, and especially those undertaken by ISS on the showcase roundabout on 329. We will be extending the wildflower areas once again in 2018, so please let us know if you would like to put forward any specific areas in your respective wards. ISS has also agreed to assist in community bulb planting and are going to be working with the Woking District Veteran Tree Association on self-set hedgerow trees and how to develop and protect hedgerows from agriculture.
Do you have a supplement?
I do have a supplementary. Obviously, I'm a member for Winnersh, so most of my experience is with Winnersh, and I do know, however, there are problems in other areas such as Arborfield and Early and Twyford. The issue is not so much whether cuts are delayed, it's the larger areas of grass which are not being cut in exactly the same way as they were not cut last year, and then we resolved it to sort out which bits would be cut and which bits wouldn't. that they've not cut the same bits they didn't cut last year. I could give you a whole list of roads starting with Walnut Avenue and ending with Woodward Close in Winnersh, where we need to define more clearly what the area, the larger areas, how the larger areas should be kept, because they're just not cutting them, and they're leaving sort of areas for informal play, which are just not, you lose your football in them, because you know, small children can't see over the top of the grass. So I'm not really exaggerating very much. So could you please try and sort out those larger areas of grass and get a plan for next year so that we know what they should look like? We don't mind if the cut's delayed by rain, but we do want them to be cut and not just left.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I'll take that away. I mean, clearly the idea of this was to let places like Verges grow so that plants and wildlife can thrive, but the flip side of that was that the play areas are to be cut as often as is required. So, so yes, I think we do need to be clear what's to be cut on what frequency.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much for raising that. Next question is Rochelle. Okay, thank you. Sure.
I think it's going to Oliver, actually. Sorry. Shouldn't councillors who go to functions for WBC pay the difference between what we are allowed for reimbursement and the actual cost of the hotel?
I've got it down for me, so
Okay.
I'll answer it. And if you're not here.
Okay.
Maybe we'll switch to all about halfway.
Well, I'm sure Charlotte gets an answer.
Exactly. Okay. Okay. The members' allowance scheme, which is contained within the council's constitution, states that members attending conference may claim a reasonable cost of overnight accommodation, e.g. 3-star hotel. This is in line with the officers' accommodation expense scheme. However, when anyone makes a choice about overnight accommodation for conferences, they need to think about more than just cost. We need to think about convenience, closeness to the conference centre, where attendees attend the event, organisers might gather, for example, and the safety of being in an unfamiliar place, particularly at night time. I happen to prefer the previous arrangement used by the council, where there was an upper limit on the amount that members and officers could claim for conferences. We could ask the Constitutional Review Working Group to look at this and put the system back into the members' allowance scheme and the officers' scheme if members felt that was correct, and make any changes. A scheme perhaps would need to reflect the fact that prices in city centres would be higher in less urbanised areas, or for example in university campuses where I've been to a number of different conferences, for example. A 3-star hotel in Manchester may be significantly more expensive than a 4-star hotel, for example, in Bournemouth. On top of this, hotels are known to increase their prices for large conferences, so this would need to be also taken into account. What we do not want, though, is a scheme that stops members or officers being able to attend conferences because they are unable to claim for suitable, sensible and safe accommodation when they travel on council business. Do you have any supplements?
Oh, yes. Since governors are expected to pay £1 every time they come for training, for parking in the car park out here, this is something they volunteer for. We're saying that we can spend more money on hotels, £149, possibly more than the allowance would be per night, and this could represent almost 900 governor visits. I would ask you, at least if you're preparing not to do this, could you give governors a special thing that says, we are governors here for this meeting, X date, and we won't be paying for parking this time, please?
I think this has been raised before, and a number of people come here for a number of different reasons to visit the council offices, and it will take us through to charge only for car parking in the evening. We could look at it again, but the question is who you charge for and who you don't, and there will always be a group of people that will be particularly unhappy about being charged for.
We don't charge
being
the
charged for.
And
I can take that away to look at in terms of those who are volunteering their time, but equally you could say that our members who are coming here in the evening are also volunteering their time, and the question would then be, would they be charged as well? So that would also put back to you as well. We had one other question which was from Charles Margette, but I note that he still, I think, in the personnel board. So
Could I give an answer or give them a written answer?
I think a written answer would be best. Thank you very much indeed. Oh, sorry, we've got one more late question. Apologies, Becky. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it wasn't late. It just came in after the exec papers had been dispatched. In the executive papers before you tonight, and this question is for Stuart, you're being asked to agree to spend a further considerable amount of money purchasing property for the regeneration of Wokingham Town Centre. The residents of Woodley, along with others in the whole borough, are picking up the bill for this huge amount of borrowing to spend on one of the 3 towns in the borough. When can Woodley residents expect the same treatment? That is around £138 million being spent on Woodley Town Centre.
Thank you for your question. Later on this evening, there is a proposal for further acquisition in the town centre. And as I said out in that paper, it's an opportunity that has arisen that has been assessed in terms of the benefit to WBC as a whole. Not only is it a good financial deal for WBC, but it also adds benefits to the regeneration of the town by its adjacency to one of our current sites. The regeneration of Woking is identified within the adopted core strategy, and it also forms part of our vision inside all our documents. If you look at 4th point down in our vision, it says, invest in regenerating towns and villages, support social and economic prosperity while encouraging business growth. It's one of our core visions. In terms of the total cost of the regeneration scheme, and I'll come back to answer your question in a second, based on the cash flow developed in April this year, is expected to generate 3.5 million per annum financial contribution in 2022 to 2023. When the whole scheme is complete and fully income producing, this figure is after meeting the cost of interest on the borrowing at 2.8% interest per annum, the current PWB rate that has been secured. This potentially rises to 4.4 million income after the debt is fully repaid, currently estimated to be FY 2029/30. The surplus is for the benefit of all our residents, including those who live in Woodley. Not only are we regenerating the town of Woking, providing additional homes, local employment, creating a great place to shop, it also makes a significant financial contribution to the benefit of all residents across the whole borough. And I think we will continue to evaluate other opportunities that make sense and present themselves and make financial sense across the borough. So it's for the whole of the borough, not just for the Woking residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. I've lived in Woodley for about 40 years and been a member of this council for well over 20 years. And a few years ago, the Conservative administration sold off the premises that they owned in Woodley. They sold the Woodley Silver to take the cash then. The imbalance of spending in this borough between Wokingham and Woodley and the other towns and villages is clearly not fair. The authority needs to be less Wokingham-centric. I'd like you to assure us that all future spending will be fair and equitable in the borough, and I'm very sad that not I, or many of my residents, will live long enough to see any work done in Woodley Town Centre that repays them for what they've paid for Wokingham Town Centre.
Well, thank you for your supplementary question. I'd just like to point out that my colleagues have reminded me that there are 2 extra care home facilities that we're doing in Woodley, and also do quite a lot of the leisure developments in Woodley. But I hear what you're saying. This was a process that was starting across the borough, and I think my brief is to do town centres and villages quite throughout the borough, not just to concentrate on one place, but we started with one place, quite rightly.
Thank you. I'd just like to add that, every time we bring something here in terms of investment, it's to generate income as well, which can then be spent in other areas in the borough. It can either be spent as investment or as revenue to then help on more vulnerable throughout the community. So it's not just limited then to spend again in Wokingham, it can be spent throughout the whole of the borough. Okay, on to the main agenda items. The first one is item 18, which is the shareholders report, pages 13 to 20, and hand over to Oliver.
Thank you. WBC Holdings is the parent company of Wokingham Housing Limited, Loddon Homes and Berrybrook Homes. Wokingham Borough Council owns 100% of WBC Holdings and appoints non-executive directors who sit on the boards of WBC Holdings and its subsidiary companies alongside other independent directors. Wokingham Borough Council directors on the WBC Holdings Limited board have changed recently, with the board chair resigning to take up executive portfolio duties, leaving one of the remaining board members to step up as the chair. A new member has also been appointed to the board to maintain the board at 3 non-executive directors. Optilis Group was split out from WBC Holdings on the 1st of April, following the formation of a partnership with the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. The group consists of Optilis Limited, Optilis Wokingham Limited and Optilis Holdings Limited. Following the formation of the new partnership, the managing director of Optilis has resigned and will be advertising for a successor in July. The financials presented are for the month of 1 month only of this financial year, and there is very little deviation from budget. That's a summary of the shareholders' report, and the recommendation to the executive is to ask you to note 1, the budget monitoring position for the month ending 30th of April 2017, 2, the operational update for the period to 31st of May 2017, and 3, the changes to the senior leadership structure of Optilis Limited.
Thank you very much. Do members have any questions for Mr.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Oliver, would I be right in saying it's always very quiet, the report on the our shareholders report, but just picking up a little bit on the last question, that one of the ventures that both companies, our housing company and Optilis, are involved with is the new extra care housing at Woodley, Foster's. And in addition to that, I think we've started releasing now the Phoenix houses, which is providing excellent new housing for people who cannot afford the market rents, and will of course be generating substantial income to this authority to look after vulnerable adults and sexually abused children. Would you like to comment on that? Is that a fair assessment?
It is a fair assessment. Phoenix Housing, I know more about than Foster's because this is a new brief for me, but I know Phoenix Housing, some of the residents have moved in. Some of the residents for Phoenix Housing have moved in and are very happy indeed with the accommodation that they now have. And I think as I get closer to the activities, I'll be able to see for myself more how the good work that's being done by these borough-owned companies.
Sorry, I'd like to make a point of clarity. One of our schemes is for care leavers, and I'd just like to clarify for the record that not all care leavers have been sexually abused. No, I'm just clarifying that for the record. I'd also like to make a point that on page 18, like Councillor Leeds made, that Phoenix Avenue is delivering our first affordable homes, and this is really good news. And the families that have started to move in are really pleased with their new homes, which is great news. And also on page 14, we're looking to appoint a Chief Executive Officer to Optilis, and I think this will be a great opportunity to move this business forward, look for new contracts in the open market, as it says on page 14, and potentially find more clients to bring to Optilis. So this will be a great development for this company going forward. Anyone else have any comments before we agree to the recommendations on page 13? No, note the recommendations? Yep. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, the next item is item 19, and it's the map-based traffic regulation orders, or otherwise known as TROs, for more consultation. And that item is under Chris Bowring, and it's page 21 to 52.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This paper is concerned with a consultation conducted in April to prepare for the digitisation of our existing traffic regulation orders in the borough that pertain to parking. Up till now, our traffic regulation orders have been held in paper form, which we might call 20th century technology. As we move towards the 21st century council, it's appropriate to upgrade the way we deal with TROs. We will soon have all our parking regulations on the council website in glorious colour. You'll be able to see precisely where the regulations apply and other information too, such as the times at which the regulations apply. I'm also taking the opportunity to look at the way our residents' parking permits operate to give residents a more flexible and an easy-to-use service. The digitisation process is also a prerequisite for our introduction of civil parking enforcement when we take over the enforcement of our traffic regulations from the police. This will bring us many gains. It will give us the ability to improve road safety, manage traffic congestion in a better way, and of course to enforce our parking regulations. The recommendation, there are 2 points. One is to approve the traffic regulation order, the other is to authorise the officers to inform respondents to the consultation of the results. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chris. Can I just ask when CPE is actually going to be introduced, please?
It should be coming in at the early part of October this year.
Oh, okay. Great news. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Okay, I just wanted to note the positive comments on the new maps and the ease of use. I think that's really positive. That, we've done something that residents find is actually better, so congratulations. So we need to approve the making of the TRO map-based order, and also the authorise the officers to inform the respondents of the results of the consultation. So if all of those members approve. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, the next items, items 20, 21 and 22 of the agenda tonight have pink papers. So I have to read out that under section 100 and 100A, 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public can be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of section 12A of the Act as appropriate. We only have one member here, and as we go through each of the items, I'll just ask if we want to discuss anything in the pink papers, then I'd ask that you could let me know, please. Thank you. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is item 20, and that's the bus services in Woodley and Early, and this is again Chris.
Thank you. Just clarify, we're still in part 1, aren't we?
We're still in part 1.
Right.
We're still in part 1, but if members want to raise anything in part 2, can you let me know? Because they're very easy to ask members of the public to leave. Thank you.
Myself, I don't need to go into part 2.
Okay, thank you.
The 19A and 19C bus routes are services which offer lifelines to some of our most deprived and vulnerable residents in the Woodley and Early area. In particular, they offer access to the Royal Berkshire Hospital and to Reading itself. Costs have unfortunately been rising, and Reading buses are now requiring a higher subsidy from Woking Borough Council. While recognising our duty of protection to the vulnerable, we also have to consider the overall cost of such services, which are paid by council taxpayers in general. The current contract for these bus routes expired in May, and the council has, after protracted negotiations, extended the contract for 3 months. We now have to consider an interim arrangement to safeguard this valued service over the next 12 months. There are 4 options available, and it's option 4 which best maintains the current service in terms of route and frequency of service for a reasonable cost to the council. So the recommendation is in three parts. The first, which I recommend, is that we implement option 4, the route you can see on the maps. Although the maps are in part 2 of it. No, they're not. No, you can't see the map. And to explore options to make the provision of these bus routes more financially sustainable through identifying alternative sources of funding, and to approve a supplementary estimate, £35,225 the current year, and to make a pressure of £8,958 growth for the following financial year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Does anyone have any questions that are in the white papers and not in the pink papers? Mark.
Thank you, Chairman. Chris, have we considered reviewing other bus services that we support in the borough, that we subsidise, please?
Yes, the bus contracts that come up for review from time to time. I think it's probably a good time at the moment there to consider our general strategy. Because as well as protecting our vulnerable residents through these subsidies, I think we also have the opportunity to try to get people to use their cars a bit less and to use public transport. In my experience, buses are rather better than they were even a few years ago. They seem to be cleaner, more punctual, even have free Wi-Fi.
And sofas.
So I haven't got sofas.
They haven't got sofas in.
What do you get?
So, coming from Richardson, I should say, what's a bus?
We'll go.
Continuing, the great benefit.
The great long mountain city.
The great benefit of what is unfortunately called modal shift means not using your car. It's twofold. People use buses more, then we may be able to mitigate some of the worst road congestion we've got, and also reduce some of the pollution from the cars standing still, which I know is a problem in Twyford.
Thank you.
Okay, there's Norman.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea to carry these services on in the interim. Clearly they're useful service to many people in Woodley and Early. I would, though, support looking at how we provide services in the future and the routes that they take. One of the problems I think is transpired with these particular routes is that they go all the way around Woodley and half the way around Early, so depending which way round you're going, you have a very long way to go to get to some places. So I think therefore the number of people that use them between Early and Woodley is relatively low, and the number of people using them in and out of Reading to Woodley and Early is higher. And I think from the numbers it looks like even half the people are students using them to go in and out. So I would like to look at perhaps a different form, in the review to look at a different form of service, which would be a more direct service and perhaps less going around the houses, so to speak. So just that point really for the future. Support taking it forward in the short term, but let's look at how we deliver these services in the future.
I think you make an excellent point, and it has been suggested to me that we perhaps can think of one service for the Woodley area and one for the Early area, which is the same would be such a long route for everyone. But as you say, we do need to consider that these services offer benefits of residents in our borough. Thank you.
Thank you, and Norman makes an excellent point. I think going forward, this bus service it feels a bit like the Circle Line in London, and I think it needs a little bit of a cut perhaps through the middle to make it better for the customers using it, and then maybe there'll be more uptake of the service. I would like to put on record my thanks also to the bus company, because they've agreed to let Woking Borough Council put some of our advertising on the hoarding of the buses on this service. So, for example, when we're advertising to recruit new foster carers, we'll be able to put that on for free. So the only cost we'll have to pay is for the posters, for the printing of it, and for actually getting it stuck onto those buses. So this is really good news and great partnership working. So great news. So the recommendation is on page 53. Do all members agree to the recommendation as printed? Thank you very much indeed. So item 21 is on page 73, and it's the acquisition of property, the lodge, due to the Arborfield Cross Relief Road. And this item is under David Lee and Chris Browering. And can I remind members again, it also has pink paper attached to it, so if you want to raise anything there, then please can you let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. There are 3 recommendations on page 73, but if I could, this is all about facilitating the delivery of the Arbortree Relief Road, which many people felt been a long time coming, but we've had many consultations, and eventually the route has been decided, which is to the benefit of all the residents in that area. However, the only problem is that it does cause us to actually look at acquiring one of the properties which will be directly affected by this road. The good news, as I said, is this road's about to go into planning. It's the start of our new road development. We've got the Northern Relief Road, the Southern Relief Road, Station Relief Road has been built. There's the Shinfield Road that a lot of people are aware of, and we've had certain delay problems on that. Hopefully when we start building this one we won't have those. But just so people are aware, it's outlined in the report, but people who live near a roadway such as this, and it impacts upon them 12 months after, it has to be a minimum of 12 months after the road has been opened, they can claim compensation. However, this council in March of this year brought in a discretionary policy, so people who were directly affected in certain circumstances did not have to wait until the road was built and then 12 months afterwards. And I'm pleased to say that we brought that in. So hopefully we will keep the residents of the lodge happy. And that property, I think you can see under the 3rd recommendation, if you agree that we acquire this under our discretionary policy, you will see under item 3 that the property services will be required to then make use of this asset for the duration that we own it. It will not sit idle and will not sit in a state that can be vandalised. If you have any questions, delighted to answer them.
Yes, thank you. My question really is just touching on that last point, David, that in my experience, when there's a major change adjacent to somebody's property, that's why they're unhappy, and that's why we're cooperating with these residents to mitigate that impact on them. However, we then have a property, and I think I'm very keen that we should rent that property out, because there's a shortage of rental properties in Wokingham. And the difference is, of course, when you're renting out a property to somebody, they come and look at the property as it is. And it's going to be a property with a relief road running close to it, and they simply accept that point. It doesn't have the same impact as somebody getting a relief road next to their property and feeling it's changed everything forever. So I would be very keen that we ensure that that property is occupied at the earliest opportunity, and some of the revenue we could get for what is a reasonable sized property could be used to mitigate the acquisition costs over time.
I'm sure that Oliver will insist that it is rented. There is a very important point here that it will be rented and not sold, because we could then fall into a trap if somebody would buy it 12 months after the road was open and demand compensation under that. We will make sure that we maximise the return we get on that. And I think, again, we cannot comment on what's in the pink papers, but it is a fair way we're going about assessing the value of this. So I hope you can all agree for 3 recommendations.
Norman.
I think having said that, for the short term, in the longer term, we'd then be free to do with the property as we wish in subsequent years.
Just one question, I'm not sure it's a question for you or Chris really, but when will this relief road start? Commission. They're applying for permission soon, aren't we? And there's a completion date next week.
It goes in for planning, and then I believe it will take realistically about a year from today to carry out all the surveys along the route of that road, and to make sure there's no groundwater, the problem we have in Shinfield. But I think this is going to be under our control at this point.
The point that you raised earlier about reselling the property on afterwards, we would put in there some details about selling it with conditions and restrictions that they would not be able to come back to us about the discretionary charges, again, so that you wouldn't be paying out twice. So I'll just direct members' attention to page 75 at the bottom, it says the application is deemed to have met the criteria that the executive approved back in March of this year. And then go to the page 73, recommendations. If no members have any points to raise, then I recommend that we approve recommendations as printed. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 22, and it's on page 81. Again, remind members that it has pink papers attached to it, so if you want to raise anything in those, then please let me know. And this item is the commercial opportunity to acquire a Wokingham Town Centre property, and Stuart Munro.
Thank you. As I said earlier, this proposal, very detailed in the big papers, is a further acquisition of a town centre property set out in that paper as an opportunity that has arisen, and it's a great benefit to us. It's right in the middle of where we're being our development. It will appear to be a very good opportunity for us. I think it's right next to our existing sites. It achieves economies of scale and so ongoing management of the site as well. And I think the outcome benefit the community are, it's repeating myself, it's a good opportunity. We'll be able to coordinate then the regeneration of the town, which I had the pleasure of walking around in detail on Wednesday. And I think we'll be able to improve all the frontages of these units along this road as well. So I thoroughly recommend it. The recommendation is the executive is recommended to take the opportunity presented and agree to the acquisition of this property within the town, as set out in the big page number 2, subject to the outcome of the due diligence process, which I can confirm has now started today.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Stuart. I support the acquisition of this property, and I understand the reasons for it. I don't need to go into the pink papers, but can you assure me that there will be an independent sort of valuation from values that we haven't used before in the town centre, just to make sure that we're not overpaying for something?
Yes, absolutely. We have people doing just that thing.
Great.
Anyone else? No, okay. I just wanted to reiterate this site presents council with an excellent commercial opportunity and is totally aligned to the regeneration of the town centre. The site will be a great asset and also will be able to generate a very healthy revenue stream. Obviously it's in the pink papers, so I can't tell you exactly what percentage, but it will be used to fund other vital services that our residents really need, so I can't recommend it highly enough. So the recommendation is on page 81. All those in favour, please. Thank you very much indeed. And that brings me to the end of this evening's meeting. Thank you very much indeed.